Welcome to Laguna Seca, where Hutchings, having joined a couple of races ago, had won both of those races and was looking dominant, taking his first pole position and remained in the lead out of turn 1. While at the back there was contact between Gould and Pitch. Pitch would take the first of his 2 mandatory pit stops at the end of that lap. The championship battle was down to Whitlock and Friesen, with Whitlock having a strong points lead, only needing a few more points to mathematically win the championship ahead of the last round. The Shade Bros were looking good at the front, potentially taking the lead of the team's championship, not far ahead of the Madhouse Bentleys of Walker and Friesen, but it would be a long 43-lap race, and there would be drama before the end. On lap 2, Walker made a move against Rees at turn 3, but ended up sideways. Following that incident, Rees took his first mandatory pit stop at the end of that lap. A corner later, Fukara had bounced on the sausage curb and hit the tyre wall, losing a few positions. Bandit in 6 had a couple of spins, this one on lap 3, just seeming to lose grip heading into turn 9, dropping to 12 from that incident. Further back, De Groot had a spin from the curb, hitting the tyre wall, losing a couple of positions, but got away without any significant damage. On lap 5, Jones was putting pressure on De Roche and had the better exit heading to the corkscrew, just finishing the overtake before they arrived, which moved Jones up to 3rd. De Roche then had the Shade Brothers behind him, and unfortunately, a slight bump from Dan at the braking zone of turn 5 led to De Roche pointing backwards. Friesen and Whitlock were battling over 7th when they arrived, and in that moment De Roche's car lurched forwards, striking Friesen, and as you can imagine, among the penalties at the end, De Roche's result did get a penalty for that incident. He took a pit stop, repairing the damage, finding himself back in the Shade sandwich, although he was a lap down, and no doubt he was a little bit distracted with the previous incident and the blue flags, and dropped it at the corkscrew, taking his 2nd mandatory pit stop at the end of that lap, exiting the pits in last, but did find some consistency and slowly regained some positions. Alves had a very dramatic couple of corners on lap 7, after Sean Bowers had spun. It looked like Alves was indecisive about whether to be careful or just commit to get past, and they got tangled up at turn 6. Alves lost a couple of positions towards the corkscrew, and then didn't get the car slowed down, making contact with Fukara. Fukara's car was fine, but Alves quickly realised that his car was undrivable, and he retired from the race. On lap 10, Rees had a good exit out of the corkscrew against McAdams, but slight contact sent McAdams off track, almost resulting in a crash. But McAdams managed to get the grip back, and drove into the pits, just before the blue flags would have been waved as Hutchings arrived. Sean Bowers would have a few crashes in this race, including this one on lap 13, but he was determined to finish the race and didn't give up. Jones in 3rd took his first pit stop on lap 15, but rather than turn on the pit limiter, he accidentally turned off the engine and had to stop the car to get the engine running again. The pit stop got even worse, as he then missed his pit box, and on the exit, rather than turn off the pit limiter, had accidentally turned his engine off again, having lost around half a minute. But he wasn't the only one with pit trouble, as Whitlock got a stop and go penalty as he exited the pits, which would drop him to 15th, once again behind Friesen, but was still just high enough to potentially secure the championship by a single point. On lap 16, McAdams repeated his earlier incident, and although he wasn't nudged off track this time, it was almost exactly the same, just managing to avoid the wall on the left after spinning from turn 10, and Hutchings arriving again to overlap him. Pitch had a little spin at the corkscrew on lap 20, and lost a few seconds waiting for a gap in traffic to safely rejoin. De Groot had another crash when his Porsche snapped, sending him into the barrier, leading to a long pit stop to repair the damage, but not before he gave De Roche a good scare when rejoining the track. So maybe a little bit of karma there for De Roche's bad rejoin earlier. There was another crash at the exit of turn 4, this time it was Wolf on lap 26, getting on the throttle while running wide and slamming into the wall, retiring from 16th. On lap 31, Jones had another bad pit stop, making the same mistake on the exit again, having to restart the car, and he was leaving the pits without enough fuel to finish the race. At the time he was in 4th, but he'd have to solve the fuel problem before the end. Pitch's Mercedes was driving like a rally car, sliding around at the corkscrew, and with nothing to lose then went off track, probably by accident, but drifted around turn 10, although he didn't have off-road tyres, and it would have been corner cutting if it had worked. He resumed the race on track, but had lost a position to Bowers. After the pit stops were done, Whitlock found himself just ahead of Hutchings, although he was a lap down. Despite the lap difference, their pace was similar, and neither of them should risk getting tangled up with each other. Hutchings had a lead of 18 seconds, and Whitlock in 12th would win the championship, finishing in that position. Whitlock ran wide at turn 4 after running over the sausage curb, but was careful not to lose the car, and would stay close behind Hutchings. They reached traffic as Hosick was overlapped, and Whitlock also got past to move up to 11th. The next car ahead was Rees, but he had a couple of crashes, and as Hutchings and Whitlock arrived it almost looked like disaster, with the race leader narrowly managing to get through in one piece, and the championship leader also getting through unscathed. On the final lap, Gould had collided with de Groot, which fortunately for Gould didn't damage his car, but de Groot's Porsche had suffered suspension damage and would limp to the checkered flag. Jones had almost run out of fuel and decided to cut his race distance by waiting at the finish line. Hutchings arrived to relieve him, making it 3 wins out of 3 races, taking his second fastest lap, and this time doing it from pole. Whitlock's result from this race was 9th, and with that he mathematically won the championship with 1 round to go. Jones crawling over the line took 10th. Portis took 2nd, which was his 3rd podium, and he was joined by Tim Shade in 3rd, who finished side by side with Walker. The battle for 2nd in the championship was still open, separated by only 14 points. Polo managed his best result in 6th. Hutchings, despite joining at the end, had jumped into the top half in 19th, and was still capable of reaching a bit higher in the final round. Good results for Shade Bros and Madhouse put them in 1st and 2nd on the team standings, but the Bentley team is still capable of winning the team's championship, on top of securing the drivers' championship. Our final round will be at the Hungaroring, so join us then, where we'll be doing highlights of the conclusion to Season 2.